Hey everybody, how's it going? Tim and Jordan here. I've got some updates for you. Oh, you know what? I don't want to do that anyway, right? We're gonna save it and send it out later, right?
Well, we
or
can
just
just do
wanna
it
go live?
live. We can
Okay.
do it live's fine.
All right, that's fine.
Is it live now?
I think it is live now.
Oh,
Is everyone-
perfect.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Tim and Jordan here. We got some updates. Some things are changing, and we wanted to get out to you. This actually just hot off the presses yesterday, a new loan program change. So this is a loan intensive thing, but it's actually really important for buyers or sellers. I think this is going to affect sellers a
Big
lot.
deal for multifamily buyers, especially people who want to be an owner occupant of a multifamily or do that multiple times.
Correct.
It's a huge deal for them.
Right. It's going to affect people's ability to. So there's a loan product that we like a lot. It's one that we use the most when possible. We want to occupy a multifamily. And right now we're able to fairly effectively be able to use that program twice before you need to move on to something else. And the difference in down payment between this program and the next closest conventional option is a 10% difference. So on the average duplex at 350 to 450, you're looking at $35,000 to $45,000 difference in down payment, even if you're living in it.
Yeah.
These changes are going to make that a lot more difficult to do that second property, and not impossible, but really close in most cases. So a lot of times you might be more limited to one property, and if you're a seller and you own a high value property, this is going to affect you the most.
Yeah, especially in the nicer neighborhoods of Minneapolis where most people really want to live. And the lower dollar neighborhoods that are less desirable and probably not as common for owner occupants, it won't really affect it too much. But
Correct. Maybe a smidge, but not as much as it will the other ones. The reason why it would affect you, so let's start with that, the ones that will get affected the least. There is a small impact to you because you're going to have less buyers. So right now this loan program allows someone to use a conventional loan product, which is more desirable to sellers, and put 5% down, buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex. And if you're a high income earner, meaning you make more than $90,000 a year, that would be combined, individual or combined, depending on who you're applying with. So if the total applicants on the loan make $90,000 or more per year, $94,000 per year. Currently, you can buy in certain areas with no restriction, but those areas are more lower income areas or middle income areas. They're not high income anyway.
yeah.
So a lot of people we know are doing that. They're buying really nice houses in these areas, and that's spurring growth and everything else and investment in that area. The problem is one of the changes to this program is they're eliminating those areas. So everything's going to have an income cap. So if you make more than $94,000, you just simply won't be able to use this program anymore. And so all of those people will be no longer in that market. Even if they are in the market to buy, they're probably going to buy in an area that they're not going to be encouraged to buy in a certain area anymore. And they're going to have about 3 times the down payment.
Yeah,
If they
15 compared to 5% is a huge difference.
If they use conventional. Now, in many cases, they're going to switch loan programs, but that's going to cost them a little bit of money. They're going to use a more expensive loan program with a lower down payment option, which would be FHA. I like FHA. A lot of people bash it. I think that that's incorrect, and it's not fair to the program, and it's not accurate. But what is accurate is FHA, especially for a high income, highly qualified buyer, is a little bit more expensive. It can be as much. It depends on the loan size for sure, but I typically see it being close to $100 a month difference on high value properties. So that'll matter, and that'll matter. Okay, so where to go from here? Changes. So let's talk about the changes, then we'll talk about the impact, right? Okay. So the first change I mentioned was they're eliminating all of the no limit areas. So now on, every area will have a cap to how much a person can make, and that cap is being reduced by 20%. So the old number was you could make $94,300, which is just under $7,900 a month. Okay, it actually isn't exactly that, but that's a round number you can use. And if you made that or less, you qualified for this program. it reduces your interest rate, it reduces your mortgage insurance, and it reduced your down payment by 2/3. So it was a big deal. It was a huge benefit to use this program. Now, to qualify for the program, you can only make $75,440, 20% reduction. That brings that max income down to just under $6,300. The exact difference in how much someone can make is $1,571 less per month to qualify. And so what does that mean, right? That means that if you make $1,571 less per month, your maximum buying power is $149,000 less. So if someone would have qualified for a $595,000 house before, I checked it out, that was kind of our max that we could get someone under the old program. They're now at $446. Okay.
It's in areas like Uptown, everything's at least 400 or above, so it's going to be hard for people to buy in that area now.
Yeah, and there are plenty of duplexes in the Twin Cities, or even other. Don't even think duplexes. I mean, this applies to fourplex. This is maximum qualifying amount. Mm-hmm. So, and we use rental income to get to this number. So that doesn't mean that, oh, well, on a duplex it's 446, but on a triplex it's more, or fourplex. No, it's going to be 446. So pretty much triplexes and fourplexes will be virtually ruled out of this program unless they're in a very low income area. But I mean, you can't buy a fourplex for 446 in most cities unless it's in a bad neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Or really bad condition.
Really rough fourplexes in rough neighborhoods going for low fours, but they're places where most owner occupants just wouldn't even touch. So.
Right.
And they're
rough shape.
They need $50,000 to $80,000.
Right?
Yeah, probably $100,000 worth of work.
Yeah.
So this rules all that out.
Yeah. So that's something important to know. If you're selling a fourplex, you've got some time. You've got a month. By the way, that's a little plug for reaching out to your realtor, Jordan or someone else. He didn't know I was going to say that. I didn't actually know that. That's on the spot. But really, if you've got a fourplex and you want to sell, you should. Now's the time.
Yeah, and you need to have it under contract before a month from now. So correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but if you get it under contract in 3 weeks, you still can meet this program. If not, you've got to find some different buyers.
Yep, that's exactly right. So a couple things. Okay, so $149,000 less buying power automatically across the board, everybody. That is everyone. And so what I mean by that is, again, I mentioned this, but I want to drive a point home here. This number includes any rental income. So in the past, if you made $75,000 and you were going to get enough rental income to get you up to 94, we could combine the two, and that was your thing. As long as you didn't exceed that 94,000, we could use rental income. We can still use rental income. That's not changing, but this $75,000 cap includes the rental income. So if you say to me, oh, Tim, I make $75,000, that's no big deal. This isn't going to affect me. Actually, yes, it will, because now at $75,000, if you make that, I can't use it in your rental income. Mm-hmm. And here's the bad news. Let's just pretend, because the numbers are easy, that you're going to make $10,000 in rental income. Well, if you make what would it be, $66,000, I can't use any of the rental income, because that would push you over the $75,000 mark with that $10,000. So it's an all or nothing thing. I can't say, oh well, you make 66, we'll use 9,000 the rental income and we'll ignore 100 that way. So you're really going to be affected too. It's not just people who make over 75,000 that are affected. Most people will be affected unless you make significantly under 60, because most of the places that you're going to buy are not going to make more than 15,000 in rental income in a year that we can count, because we don't count 100% of the income.
70%, correct?
75, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. 75 of the unit you're not living in, right? Mm-hmm. So
units.
Or units, yeah. If it's multi-unit, yeah, correct. So I mean, but for the average Twin Cities duplex, we kind of ballpark it at $900 a month that we can use. It's $1,200 at 75%, $900. So 900, times 12 is in that what, 10? I believe it's 10,800 a year.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. So for most people, anyone who makes more than, let's call it 65,000, we won't even be using rental income anymore, because we won't be able to for most purchases. That's not every purchase, by the way. This is a generic video. There might be situations where someone's under renting, like they're only charging $800 a month, and so they're under renting. We'll be able to use that, but
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to see too many of those nowadays.
Probably not. No, average rent in the Twin Cities is way more than 1,200 even. I think it's 1,700 is the average rent now
Right.
across the board, and that doesn't really, for duplexes, I'd say the average rent's 1,200 to 1,500, but average rent for a two-bedroom in the Twin Cities 1,700.
Yeah. And the higher that rent gets, the harder it is going to be to stuff that income in underneath, you know, on top of your salary and get it below these limits. So frankly, I mean, this is just bad news for all big, any, you know, the nicer the duplex, the worse news it is, or the nicer the property, or the more units, really bad news for triplex and fourplex.
And you really find anymore, a lot of the stuff that comes on the market is already fixed up and already in good shape. There's not a plethora of fixer-uppers hitting the market that I've seen. And they're still out there, certainly, but you have to look harder, which is odd. You have to look harder to find something that needs work. It's easier to find something that's almost turnkey because people have bought these over the years. So to find something that needs some work and might have low rents or just needs a lot of rehab, that's a little harder to do than it was, say, even a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
probably because people know, right?
They're
in the know. Now, this, you know, it's bad news, right? But we still do loans. It's just going to change things. Few other changes. So the max loan amount on a conventional loan on a conventional loan is $620,200 for a duplex. I'm only going to talk duplex here now. Mm-hmm. $620,200. Okay. That max loan that I can approve someone for on this conventional is going to be closer to a purchase price, not a loan amount, but a purchase price of $595, right? So that's went down. I'm sorry, $446. I take that back. $446 purchase price. So that really has changed that market for anyone in that uptown area or high-end market. Edina, we're doing one right now in Edina that would no longer qualify. I've got at least two right now that would no longer qualify under this program that are going on.
And just to give everybody an idea, what's the FHA limit in the Twin Cities?
Yeah, the FHA limit in the Twin Cities is $486. I'm sorry, loan amount. Let's go back to loan amount. I take that back. $469,600.
And the FHA down payment's only 3.5. So
yes. So if you add that down payment on top of it, that's where you come to the 486 number. I was just going to give you 486,632. 32. Now let's just say, you know, someone who moved from a 5% down program would be willing to put 5% down on FHA, right? Because they were going to anyway. Yeah. That would bring you up to 494. But now you've went from 595. Qualification with 5% down with the old limit down to 494. That's a big swing.
And I think that the important fact here is that over 500,000 across the board, it's going to be harder to buy duplexes that are priced over that. So if you're looking to sell a duplex, triplex, or fourplex over 500,000, the time is now rather than waiting 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, you've got essentially a little bit more than 1 month to find a buyer. The drop dead date is they have to have an application before July 28th. And let's just be real clear on application. That doesn't mean they've gotten pre-qualified. That means they have a contract on a house that doesn't fall out. So if you get a contract on house A before that date and you apply and you meet the guideline, but then it goes out because of inspection or some other reason, you can't go to property B and say, oh, but I had applied at this other house. It doesn't work that way for Freddie Mac, who sets the rule. It has to be on the house that you end up closing on. So you need to have a contract before the 27th. And I would actually say the 26th, because remember, we have to get the contract dated and signed before the 28th. So if you're leaving it to the day of and it's 5 o'clock, you're at risk, right? I mean, you're really in risk. For anything, these systems for us, we have to, all the documents you sign are legal. I'm not allowed to do them. I have to send them through a document service, and they take a legal review to make sure it's all done right. So really, you're talking a few days before that. Maybe the 25th is
to be safe.
Like that. Yeah. We'll rush them, but there's only so much you can do.
You don't want to transaction to fall apart midway or even in the beginning because of the financing, and this would be a good way to make that happen. Get it signed on the 28th, think you're good to go, and you're really not.
Yep. So in theory, because I gave some max prices there, but those are based on taxes and stuff. In theory, the max price dropped by $150,000. In practice, that might be a little different. It may be closer to 100, but some pretty big things if you're looking at any of these types. Triplex, fourplex, anywhere in the cities, duplex in a high income area, or just a really nice duplex. Your buyers will have financing, but it'll be FHA. That means that, the downsides to you as a seller is that means a little bit pickier appraisal, a little bit harder on older homes. And other than that, I wouldn't say there's too many downsides to the seller that way, except for significantly reduced price now, right? That people can qualify for. Because the consequence to your buyer, which affects you, is that they have to triple their down payment on these big properties, right? So I did a loan.
It's just a much smaller buyer pool when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I did a loan a couple months ago, 2 months ago now, $720,000 property in Uptown. That property would no longer qualify for the conventional loan product, and so the person would not have, they just didn't have 15% to put down on 750 or 720. Sorry. So imagine this: like, that deal does not exist. That buyer does not exist for that seller, and many, many more don't. Right? Because if you've got over $100,000 to put down, you buy that property. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. I know I wouldn't. And I know a lot of people would stick that money into something else, maybe an apartment building, other areas. Money's going to shift in this. So the biggest thing is if you're a seller. That's what I'm encouraging sellers as much or more than buyers right now to contact their realtor, contact Jordan, and get something figured out.
Yeah, because the reason why prices have been driven up so much in the Twin Cities is largely because of owner occupants. It's not just investors that are driving these prices up. I'd say I've sold quite a few duplexes in the last few years. Most, maybe 85, 90% of the buyers are owner occupants. They're not investors. You keep seeing headlines, well, investors driving prices up. I mean, these are investors in a way, but they're not buying it just purely for investment. They're going to live in it for, at a minimum, a year, and then they're going to move out. And that's where a lot of the demand is coming from, or the majority of the demand is coming from. So that demand is going to not vanish, but it's going to drop quite a bit. And they're not going to be able to buy those higher priced duplexes, which frankly were a great deal. You could get into a $600,000 asset for 5% down and enjoy the appreciation and loan pay down on that, which is awesome. And now that just dropped quite a bit. Yeah.
But if now all of a sudden $460,000 duplexes are now being priced closer to $445 to hit these limits that we need, that's going to trickle down. That means that 430 might be closer to 415. I mean, you're going to see a trickle down, right? Because people will naturally select the nicer property if there's no price difference. So as those nicer properties come down a little, or are forced, or they have a ceiling that they're not going to really exceed as quickly, you're going to see a small trickle down.
And I think it will take a little while for the effects of this to be seen. So don't expect in July that prices just plummet because of this.
Yeah, good point.
People aren't going to figure this out until they start running into issues. It's not an instant thing. Not everybody knows the same things Tim knows. So this isn't going to just fly out the door and happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm on some Facebook groups with loan officers, hundreds of loan officers in each of these groups, and it's not being talked about at all. And that's because most loan officers don't focus on multifamily, so they don't know, nor do they care, right?
And I'd say,
I care because this is a huge part of my business.
Absolutely. And for normal loan officers, they're not going to find out until there's an issue, until the loan gets turned down.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So we do have options. The options are going to be limited on those higher end properties. So just I mean, this isn't like a death sentence. It's just a big deal, and it is something that you should plan for if you're thinking about buying now, or you're thinking about selling, or you have one of these properties that's affected. That you should look into it. You've got it has to be before the 28th of next month, July.
But we do have some good news too, so we want to keep it light at the same time.
Yeah.
About the other thing we were going to talk about.
Okay, so well, good news in the sense that we want to remind you something. Jordan and I's very first video ever was about how you can manage joint debt. And what I mean by that is, like, so if you're, let's call, in a relationship, usually a spouse type relationship, but not always. If you're in a relationship and you have joint debt, meaning you're co-signing for other people, that affects your ability to get approved. And I had 2 deals within the last week where people's their ability to get approved was dramatically affected by joint debt that was unnecessary. And so here's what I mean by that. It's pretty common you go out shopping for a car or shopping for like student loans, and they'll tell you need to, we need you to co-sign. We need you to apply together. Well, it's easier for them. but that's not necessarily in your best interest. We have someone now who they had 2 leases on cars. They were both on each other's credits. One of them, midway through the transaction, lost his job. So the husband lost his job. Now the wife has both car loans on her credit, even though she didn't need to. The husband, 100% qualified. He could have frankly put both cars on his name when he was employed and not even had her on them, right? Not that I suggest that, actually. I think that's the wrong idea. But what he certainly could have done is had his car loan in his name, hers in her name, right? If you do that, they both have credit. There's zero reason they needed to do this. But because they were both in her name and his car loan it's a lease, but was so much higher than hers, she has to pay off hers just to qualify. The good news for them is they have $100,000 in the bank. So they're able to do this, but they have to do it only because of how they finance it. No other reason. And this is on a low value home. They're buying a $179,000 townhome. So this is not the type of transaction where you go, oh well, they're rich. They got $100,000 in the bank. They're buying a $500,000 house. I don't feel bad for them. No, this is just poor planning because they didn't know. It's ignorance in the true sense of the word. They had no idea they were hurting themselves.
Sure.
They just did it.
Creditors want to grab onto as many people or as many assets as they can. So getting 2 people to sign on a loan is much more advantageous than just getting one person to sign on a loan.
Yes.
You want to grab as much as you can to have that collateral. So if he loses his job, you can go after her to make the loan payment.
Correct. And so what I want you to do, at least the next time this comes up, is strongly consider keeping each debt in one person's name only. My wife and I do this exclusively now. I won't even allow it. Last time she bought a vehicle, I said the only way we're buying this vehicle is if you can get it in your name. If they want me on the loan, then we don't buy it, period. And they asked, and I told them that, and guess what? They magically got it to work under all the terms we needed. It's funny how magical it really was. It just kind of appeared.
Well, I think that they're trained to get both people to sign on the loan, so you can't blame anybody. I mean, really, you're getting more collateral.
Yep, absolutely. But I know what's going to come up. There's going to be many situations where you get this car loan offer and they say, well, we can do it, but it's going to be 1% higher, right? That's what they're going to say. Or it might not be 1%. It might be more like 0.5%. And I really want you to do the math because people focus on things like interest rates a little too much and they don't look at both sides. So if that 1% on a car loan, let's call it a $40,000 car loan, right, is going to be 10% on a $40,000 car loan would be $4,000, right? Mm-hmm. So 1% is $400, right? I think, right?
Yeah.
Per year.
Yeah.
That's how much that costs you extra. $400 per year to have the ability to buy the house you want, to have the ability to buy the investment property you want, and to not have to pay that loan off in order to do something like that.
Yeah, so what you're getting at is really just, I guess, keep your finances separate. You don't have to for investment purposes, especially even home buying purposes.
If you're sure, you should that with completely, and I would absolutely pay 1% more to have debt split if I needed to. Mm-hmm. That's it. Very important, and heck, if you want to meet with me and we can go through numbers, I can geek out all day on numbers. So anyway, that's all I got for now.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you have any questions, post them below. We'll answer anything you've got.
Yeah,
if you want to meet with either of us, just reach out too, and we'll also do that.
Yeah, for sure. Questions down below if you want to comment or question. Go ahead and do that, and we'll reach out to you and make sure you get your questions answered.
Yeah, and as always, the best time to get started is now. So we just had a few things to talk about, but reach out, talk to people, get started. The longer you wait, the more you lose.
Yeah. See you at the next meetup. Bye.
Yeah, absolutely.